Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world. One quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Friday, 6th June 25, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. The United States experienced strong economic and financial market performance, with the job market exceeding expectations. This led to rising stocks, a stronger dollar, and lower gold prices as interest rate cut expectations decreased. The S&P 500 closed at 6,000, the Dow Jones Industrial Average achieved record gains, and the Nasdaq surged. U.S. equity funds, however, saw outflows due to trade policy concerns. The U.S. Federal Reserve faces pressure from President Trump to cut interest rates by a full point. The U.S. Treasury found no currency manipulation in 2024, but added Ireland and Switzerland to its monitoring list, expanding currency oversight. U.S. household debt reached a record level, technologies, planned stake sales in US renewables, and a strong jobs report has reduced bets on 2025 Fed cut. Continuing on trade, the U.S. and China are preparing for trade negotiations in London on June 9th, following discussions between President Xi Jinping and President Trump. High-level U.S. officials and a Chinese delegation will participate in these talks, aiming to resolve tariff and technology disputes. Despite these talks, both countries exchanged criticisms over trade issues in Shanghai. U.S. retail giants are pressuring Chinese suppliers to absorb rising shipping costs, while Asian countries face pressure to choose between U.S. demands on supply chains and maintaining economic ambiguity. A survey indicated that U.S. firms in China are increasingly localizing instead of relocating production back to the U.S. due to tariffs. Chinese manufacturers are delaying major decisions due to policy shifts and uncertainty regarding President Trump's actions. US investment. Firm Artisan Partners is set to liquidate its China portfolio by the end of June. Shifting to Australia, shares experienced volatility, initially tumbling before recovering to maintain a 4-week winning streak. But DAX 200 recorded its 4th consecutive week of gains despite a GDP slump. Individual stocks showed mixed performance, with CBA sliding and Qantas rallying. Caution prevailed as investors awaited U.S. payrolls data. Demand for organic and locally sourced oranges is on the rise, supported by sustainable farming practices and technological advancements. WHAM Life, an Australian resorts operator, is considering an ASX debut, and Rio Tinto is reportedly considering a bailout for an Australian aluminium smelter. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, London stocks remained steady as markets awaited the U.S. employment report. Wise's potential U.S. listing could signal a decline for London's fintech IPO market. Turning to South Korea, President Lee and President Trump held their first post-election call, pledging closer ties between the U.S. and South Korea. In India, bonds experienced volatility following a larger-than-expected interest rate cut, contrasting with subdued trends across emerging Asia as markets awaited U.S. payrolls data. Key pharmaceutical stocks, including Granules India and Gland Pharma, showed recovery, with the Nifty Pharma Index increasing due to improved global trade sentiment and U.S. policy changes. Over New Zealand, an Australian Navy ship accidentally blocked Wi-Fi across parts of the country. The share trading app Moomoo has launched in New Zealand, coinciding with record-high Kiwi investment in US markets. Across the sea in Japan, Nomura flagged the risk of a sharp yen rally due to U.S.-Japan policy pressure. Tokyo stocks climbed on hopes of easing US-China trade tensions. Finally, in Canada, key U.S. and Canada jobs data tipped the TSX up on June 6, 2025. China is navigating a complex economic landscape, ramping up manufacturing and exports in what some are calling a potential China shock. To compensate for sluggish domestic consumption, Beijing has approved more export licenses for rare earth minerals and magnets. These supplies remain constrained, disrupting supply chains and affecting Western and Indian automakers. President Trump stated that President Xi Jinping agreed to allow rare earth minerals and magnets to flow to the U.S. China's gold reserves have increased for the 7th consecutive month in May. The Beijing Academy of Artificial Intelligence, BAI, launched open-source AI models for robot development. DeepSeek, a Chinese AI startup, is hiring interns to label medical data. SMIC divested its stake in Ningbo Semiconductor, International NSI, to GOK Microelectronics. Hong Kong remains China's primary financial hub despite Shanghai's ambitions. Chinese stocks closed down after a U.S.-China call yielded no trade progress. China increased military activities near Taiwan, detecting 34 aircraft, 8 naval vessels, and 1 ship. China is advancing a new price discovery ecosystem, focusing on Shanghai Platinum Week. Turning to U.S.-China relations, the dynamic remains complex, marked by both cooperation and friction. President Trump announced upcoming U.S.-China trade talks in London, following a temporary tariff reduction. A high-stakes U.S.-China call has yet to resolve a metals shortage. This shortage could halt production of cars and other industrial parts. China portrayed the call between Xi Jinping and President Trump as an appeal to maintain stability. Despite China's support for Russia's war efforts, President Trump has not publicly criticized China on this matter. ETNs, with ties to the Chinese Communist Party, received VIP treatment at a Trump crypto dinner. In South Korea, entertainment stocks, including HYBE, the K-pop firm behind BTS, are anticipated to rise. This expectation is based on hopes of improved China ties under Korea's Lee Jae-myung administration. Elsewhere, Gillian Sackler, a philanthropist, has died at 84. She defended her husband, Arthur Sackler's legacy regarding the opioid crisis, stating that he should not be blamed, as he died well before it began. Lastly, the China-born monster character Laubu has become a global hit. India's economic activity was marked by the Reserve Bank of India's RBI decision to cut the repo rate by 50 basis points to 5.5%, alongside a reduction in the cash reserve ratio, CAR, by 100 basis points. The RBI's moves sought to spur economic growth and increase credit demand. The stock market reacted positively, with financials and realty sectors leading the gains. However, the RBI governor expressed concerns that crypto trading might impede financial stability, although no specific bill was introduced. Household surveys indicated expectations of sustained low inflation. In the corporate and investment arena, L&T is set to raise €500 crore through India's inaugural listed SG bond deal under SEBI HSBC. Incred Equities recommends 21 stocks with an AD rating, pointing to a favorable monsoon and robust GVA growth despite global trade tensions. Mehul Kotare of Anand Rathi provided specific recommendations for Motherson Sumi Wiring, India GMR Airports, and NHPC Dell Wire. NSA Sustainability introduced SK ratings for Indian companies. Shares of Gravita India rose over 2% in anticipation of the final approval of India's critical minerals recycling policy. Adani stocks saw a decline following a U.S. probe report, while financials and its sectors put downward pressure on Indian shares. Further developments include Starlink, owned by Elon Musk, receiving a license to launch its satellite internet services in India. Precision engineering companies are playing a key role in India's advanced manufacturing, defense, and space technology sectors. The India-Middle East-Europe corridor is being viewed as a crucial element of India's economic future. Disaster risk reduction. Financing is considered essential for the effective operation of national disaster management systems. The country's Unicorn Club has now expanded to include over 100 companies. Coxwave CEO Kim Jo-won is now targeting the US AI market after achieving success in India. South Korea's economic and political landscape is currently seeing active negotiations. President Lee Jae-myung and former US President Trump have agreed to accelerate tariff negotiations, even as the U.S. Treasury monitors South Korea for potential currency manipulation due to trade surplus concerns. South Korea is actively working to boost currency talks with the U.S. to build trust. Following a Memorial Day commemoration, President Lee visited a traditional market. His administration is also charting a new foreign policy course, emphasizing strategic flexibility in a multipolar world. The stock market in South Korea has seen post-election gains, reaching 10-month highs, though this occurs amidst mixed performance in Asian markets. While the AI surge has not boosted the overall stock market significantly, small-cap stocks have experienced gains. There is increasing momentum for Bitcoin ETFs, driven by signals of institutional adoption from the new administration. PancakeSwap is capitalizing on South Korea's Web3 growth with BNB Chain meetups in Seoul. However, foreign brands such as Tim Hortons and Blue Bottle are facing challenges, adapting to rapidly changing consumer preferences in the Korean market. According to a recent survey, 7 out of 10 liberals in South Korea support a fiscally responsible approach to expanding welfare programs. South Korea has welcomed Macau and Henkin's new cross-region tourism initiative. Lodig Industries is expanding its Asian presence with a new branch office in South Korea. Netflix's first Korean animated film, Lost in Starlight, has also achieved a top 10 ranking in Korea. Russia witnessed its ruble becoming the world's top-performing currency in 2025. But Russia's central bank then implemented its first interest rate cut since 2022, reducing rates to 20% due to easing inflation. Governor Nabiullina addressed the rate cut, inflation, and the ruble's strength. Given tense relations with the U.S., Russia foresees limited chances for renewing the nuclear arms pact. A Russian lawmaker even proposed granting political asylum to Elon Musk amid his tensions with Donald Trump. Russia justified strikes against Kyiv and other locations as retaliation for Ukrainian terrorist acts, while Ukraine reported Russian missiles and drones striking Kyiv, Ternopil, and Lutsk in a major air assault, causing civilian deaths. Moreover, Russia allegedly intends to occupy Ukrainian territory east of the Dnipro River and cut off Ukraine's Black Sea access. The National Guard in Russia also reported killing a man who attempted a drone attack on a military site. Turning to the European Union, Brussels is contemplating adding Russia to its money laundering grey list, as reported by the Financial Times. The EU is also championing continued sanctions leadership despite uncertainties surrounding Donald Trump's potential policies, noting Russia's $1 trillion gain from the war. In the United States, Donald Trump is reportedly seeking Russia's assistance in reviving stalled U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations. Trump also expressed skepticism about the possibility of immediate peace between Russia and Ukraine. In Ukraine, officials reported that Russian missiles and drones hit Kyiv, Ternopil, and Lutsk in one of Moscow's largest air assaults, resulting in civilian casualties, which Russia claimed were in response to Ukrainian terrorist acts. Where Russia reportedly plans to occupy Ukrainian territory east of the Dnipro River and sever Ukraine's access to the Black Sea. Saudi Arabia anticipates economic growth through 2025. The information and communications technology ICT market is predicted to surpass USD 71.58 billion by 2033, demonstrating a compound annual growth rate (CAGR) of 5.25%. The kingdom is actively promoting its cultural industries to broaden their international appeal. In the energy sector, Saudi Arabia reduced its July oil prices for Asian markets after an OPEC's decision to boost supply. The Public Investment Fund, PIF, is deepening its relationship with FIFA through sponsorships, including the Club World Cup. Simultaneously, Saudi Arabia is placing greater demands on global asset managers. Flynas finalized the allocation of its IPO shares. Joby Aviation finalized an agreement concerning electric vertical takeoff and landing (eVTOL) aircraft. Tottenham's Son Heung-min is reportedly attracting transfer interest from Saudi Arabian clubs, creating speculation about his future. The owners of UFC and WA are reportedly close to an agreement with Saudi Arabia to establish a new boxing league, reflecting $2.80 billion in TKO revenue for 2024. Noveen Asset Management LLC divested 4,454 shares of iShares MSCID ETF. The Hajj pilgrimage concluded as pilgrims participated in the Stoning the Devil ritual. Europe stock markets presented a mixed bag, reacting to economic figures, trade dynamics, and the European Central Bank's policy moves. The week began calmly as investors held their breath for critical U.S. employment reports. A surge of optimism, fueled by positive jobs data and encouraging trade developments, propelled European stocks to a second week of gains. Anticipation of an ECB rate cut then added further momentum, and once the cut materialized, markets climbed higher. In Germany, the DAX index approached a record peak, buoyed by the prospect of tax relief measures. However, not all news was positive, as Tesla saw a drop in sales across major European markets, save for one exception. Adding to a sense of unease, an Ipsos poll revealed a widespread belief among Europeans that their countries are declining and society is fractured. Turning to Switzerland, shares of UBS jumped 3.8% after the Swiss government introduced proposed stricter capital requirements for banks. United Kingdom. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, is weighing the possibility of lifting the ban on crypto exchange-traded notes, ETNs, for retail investors, a move that could open the door for UK retail crypto ETF trading, though some restrictions might remain in place. In other financial news from the UK, fintech firm Wise intends to shift its primary stock listing from London to the United States. Investment trust Finsbury Growth and Income is targeting digital winners to drive financial outperformance. Elsewhere in the political sphere, Allegra Stratton is urging a course of restoration rather than a revolutionary upheaval. Ukraine-Russia conflict. The conflict between Ukraine and Russia continues with heightened intensity. Russia reported launching a massive attack targeting almost all of Ukraine, deploying more than 400 drones and 40 missiles in what it claims was retaliation for Ukrainian strikes. Ukrainian President Zelensky verified the broad scope of the attacks. Ukraine's general staff reported preemptive strikes on Russian air bases in anticipation of impending drone and missile assaults. The Kremlin responded to remarks by Donald Trump, who described the conflict as fighting children, asserting that the war in Ukraine is a matter of existential importance. Taiwan. The geopolitical climate surrounding Taiwan remains tense, approaching a critical juncture. Switzerland. Switzerland is actively engaged in the international exchange of tax data. Japan's legal system determined that former executives at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant held no liability for the 2011 meltdown. Shifting to trade, negotiator Akazawa indicated advancement in tariff discussions with the US, potentially marking the last session before the G7 summit on June 15th. The Nikkei stock average in Japan has been on the rise, supported by a weakened yen and decreased concerns regarding trade conflict. Metaplanet is poised to secure $5.30 billion through Japan's most substantial stock warrant deal to increase its Bitcoin asset. Private equity exit values in Japan have rebounded to record highs, hitting $13 in 2024, as reported by Bain. Nunt has acquired a data center site, contributing to heightened real estate activity in Asia. Moreover, iSpace is endeavoring to restore communication with its moonlander. Switzerland's strong franc, typically a safe haven, poses economic challenges, raising the possibility of a return to negative interest rates. The U.S. Treasury Department has added Switzerland to a currency practices monitoring list. Amid recent crises, Switzerland is tightening regulations on UBS, requiring a $26 billion capital increase. These stricter rules could affect UBS's global expansion plans. Switzerland will now share cryptocurrency information with India and 73 other nations, promoting global collaboration on crypto oversight. This information exchange encompasses 74 countries in total. Japan's Nikkei index showcased resilience, jumping 0.5% amidst a landscape of fluctuating Asian market dynamics. South Korea experienced a significant political shift with the election of a new leader, injecting optimism into regional markets. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, however, bucked the trend, concluding its winning streak. Across the continent, Asian equities benefited from substantial foreign investment, marking the largest monthly inflow in 15 months. Amidst these financial movements, Asian companies are actively considering listing opportunities on the Saudi stock market, signaling a diversification of investment strategies. Simultaneously, President Trump's implementation of steel and aluminum tariffs added another layer of complexity, contributing to the mixed market reactions witnessed throughout Asia. South Africa's economic pulse is quickening, evidenced by a Purchasing Managers Index, PMI, hitting a 4-year peak, signaling robust business activity. Keeping an eye on financial stability, the South African Reserve Bank, SARB, has mandated climate stress tests for the nation's insurers. In the corporate realm, Mr. Price announced a rise in annual profit, buoyed by impressive sales figures in the latter half of the year. The South African rand, however, weakened in response to positive employment statistics. Shifting to real estate, 3 South African shopping centers changed hands for a combined R$209 million. The automotive industry remains dynamic, with notable events unfolding and the introduction of the GQ7SS hybrid, complete with pricing and technical details, adding to the market's offerings. In other news, an African panel is contesting Fitch's decision to downgrade Afreximbank's ratings. Taiwan engaged in discussions regarding energy collaboration with the United States during the Alaska summit. Amazon is set to inject over $5 billion into Taiwan to create a new Amazon Web Services, AWS, region, further integrating Taiwan into its worldwide cloud infrastructure. Pegatron, a Taiwanese enterprise, has devised a solution to circumvent China's restrictions on rare earth elements. Despite an initial surge, with the Taiwan-weighted index climbing 2.32%, Taiwan's stock market concluded with a decrease, anticipating the release of U.S. employment figures. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz has reported that U.S. President Donald Trump is receptive to discussion and continues to support NATO. Shifting to economic developments, car parts retailer Autodoc is reportedly preparing for a German IPO, according to a Buchkrone. This news arrives as the predicted outlook for German stocks becomes potentially less positive. Canada's stock market experienced a boost, with the S&P TSX Composite Index rising 0.33% thanks to gains in tech and energy sectors, while the labor market showed signs of cooling as the unemployment rate crept up to 7% with just 800 jobs added. Brazil is seeing renewed investment in its stock market by asset managers, despite recent economic difficulties. Meanwhile, a Brazilian comedian faced legal consequences, receiving a jail sentence for offensive racist and homophobic jokes. El Salvador saw Kilma Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported, being returned to the United States to face immigrant smuggling charges following a Supreme Court decision that upheld a federal judge's order. Hong Kong hosted a signing and authorization ceremony between Atheros Group of the United States and Falcon Capital Asia Pacific. Thailand's stock market took a hit, closing down 4.2 points, dragged down by Delta Top and impacted by political tensions related to the Thailand-Cambodia Faxon case. Egypt experienced a surge in startup funding across the Middle East, and North Africa, MENA, region in May, leading the rebound. Additionally, remittances to Egypt have nearly doubled, reaching $26 billion dart. Somalia voiced concerns at the International Labour Conference, ILSE, in Geneva, accusing Saudi Arabia of labor exploitation, despite an existing employment agreement between the two nations. Syria's potential political shift, specifically the fall of Assad, is reshaping the relationship between Turkey and Saudi Arabia, potentially turning former rivals into partners. Bangladesh saw several villages celebrating Eid al-Adha on Friday, aligning their observances with those in Saudi Arabia. Cambodia received a proposal from Russia for a partnership with its embassy in Moscow, aiming to boost trade and tourism between the two nations. Pakistan witnessed the signing of contracts worth $13 million by Pakistani firms at the inaugural Pakistan-Bahrain Investment Summit. Ireland was added to the Trump administration's monitoring list due to concerns about currency manipulation. France is working with Germany, as Merz is pledging a new bid to resolve the ongoing impasse concerning capital markets. Chile's annual inflation rate has slowed, reaching its lowest point since November. Singapore is grappling with a growing concern as children face increasing pressure from excessive tutoring. Israel is facing scrutiny as the International Criminal Court, ICC, proceeds with a case against Prime Minister Netanyahu. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.